time for the Severe MMA Preview Show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
That's right. It is I, O'Neill, and it's the Three Musketeers with me tonight to discuss Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. We're barely recovered from UFC 276, but we're still going to do the damn thing. We're going to bring you through this card over the next hour or so. As always, I am joined by Harry Powell and Spencer Kite, who will help me talk about this card. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me remind you about our great sponsors, All Real Nutrition Bars. Head on over to eatallreal.com, enter the code word SevereMMA, and get yourself some delicious Irish-made protein bars. Eatallreal.com, code word SevereMMA. Get you some. Guys, we're just kicking off here for the fight that has been labeled the Battle of the Rafaels in the lightweight division. It headlines yet another UFC Apex card. Looking from the outside in, you might not think this is a good card, but there's a lot of good fighters sprinkled about. There's a lot of stories that are going to come out of this card as well, but we're going to get right into the main event from the get-go. Rafael dos Anjos, at 37 years of age, owes nothing to no one in this sport. The former lightweight champion is coming in to take on Rafael Fiziev, the new up-and-comer in the lightweight division, if you'd like to call him that. He will be facing his toughest challenge, in my opinion, on Saturday night in the main event. Guys, we were talking about this fight before we came on air, and we are all kind of in the opinion that we're not quite yet convinced about how good Rafael Fiziev is, but I think it would be safe to say if he was able to go in there on Saturday night and dispatch of Rafael dos Anjos, we have a proper legit contender in the lightweight division, but that is going to be easier said than done. Rafael dos Anjos went in there against Renato Moicano in the last time, and he absolutely destroyed his fellow Brazilian, took his foot off the gas, and felt sorry for him, I guess, towards the end of it. I think dos Anjos at 37, it's safe to say that, his best days are probably behind him, but he is by no means done yet. And he himself is still looking as himself as a title contender, and he looks as this fight as a kind of a stepping stone to get up there into further title contention. Spencer, I'll go to you first, just for your quick thoughts on both of these fighters and the fight overall, please.
I mean, I love this matchup for exactly the things you said and that we laid out and we're talking about before we came on air. This is one of those fights where every question we have about each of these men is going to be answered in some way, shape, or form on Saturday night. For dos Anjos, it's the kind of fight against a younger, emerging talent that he needs to win in order to confirm those things that he believes about himself, that he's still a contender, that he's still somebody that should be moving forward and fighting in some of these bigger lightweight fights. No disrespect to the two guys he's beaten since coming back to 55, Paul Felder and Renato Moicano. Both of those fights are short notice. Moicano was actually up in weight, so there was no weight cut, and that factors in there as well. This is the test. This is the one that shows, as you said, if you go out and beat this guy that's on the come up and won 5 straight, then we have to put you in that mix with those guys that are, I think he's number 7 in the rankings. We have to put you in there with the 6 men ahead of you. And on the flip side for Fiziev, this is the guy you got to beat. He's in that position where every subsequent fight is the biggest test of his career, and we kind of can't really set a ceiling for him until we see one of those tests that he fails or at least struggles with, right? So far, there haven't really been struggles. He looked great against Brad Riddell. He looked great against Bobby Green. All those wins that he's piled up since that quick loss in his debut have looked really good. But RDA is a different animal. And so this fight, over 25 minutes against a guy that has a wealth of experience, that can push the pace, that can force him to grapple and, test him in some ways that we haven't seen yet. that's what this one's all about. And like you guys, I cannot wait until Saturday night to see it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good one. And with Fiziev, Harry, I mean, okay, he's young in his career. You know, he has fought against the level of opposition in the UFC so far that has kind of suited his style. You know, we spoke about Moicano, maybe him getting in and trying to test the grappling of Fiziev, but he didn't get the chance in that. He was absolutely devastated with a vicious 3-punch combination. Bobby Green looked good against Bobby Green. Bobby Green just simply didn't wrestle. Brad Riddell, not known for his grappling prowess either. Rafael dos Anjos is, and he showed us heavy in that last fight. But maybe before you get into the nitty gritty of it, with someone like Fiziev at 29, at 12 fights only in his professional career, he's a guy who's still developing at this stage of his career. And I think he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. But the big question is he good enough to beat someone like Rafael dos Anjos on Saturday night? And if he doesn't do that, I mean, it's not the end of the road for him either.
Absolutely not. And I think, look, we are not going to know, is the honest answer. We can sit here and we can do the research, we can do the tape watch, we can do everything. It just pertains that you set it up beautifully. The fights that Fiziev has had so far in the UFC don't answer some of the questions that we need answered before we get to a fight like RDA, right? Really, what RDA should offer Fiziev is the veteran fight, right? You're going against a very high level veteran. We're seeing, can you deal with the old looks, the ways that somebody like RDA can use to stay in a fight if he needs to stay in a fight? That's what we really should be using RDA for, but we're not, right? This is the grappling test and the veteran test, but more so the grappling test. And to your point, Riddell, Diakese, Alex White, these kind of fights, Moicano obviously was, half of that grappling test. They are fighters that don't necessarily need to grapple, don't necessarily want to grapple. But the point you made about Riddell not being known for his grappling, he still managed to put Fiziev down, and he still managed to get to a back body lock when Fiziev managed to stand. And I think that is a very, very interesting part of this fight. If you want me to jump into the details, I will, or do you want to drag it back a bit?
Let's talk a little bit more about maybe the two fighters in general, and let's maybe shoot back to Rafael dos Anjos. At this stage in his career, I think it's absolutely crazy that he's still up there fighting in the top 10 in one of the toughest divisions in the UFC right now. It's a testament to his drive. It's a testament to his will to be successful and to get that championship belt again. I mean, what does a win do for him here, Spencer? How far do you think he can go?
I mean, I think it puts him in that, to me, it should put him in that group with the 6 people ahead of him, because he's established, he's a former champion. Like, he's done more in the UFC in this division than Michael Chandler has, right? And so he should be in that in that range. Now, will he be? Probably not. He's probably going to be stuck in this role for at least one more fight. I would wager. Like, I can see him winning this fight and getting stuck in there with somebody like a Mateusz Gamrot, where it's beat another young up-and-comer and become the guy that has to just face all of these young up-and-comers, because the people ahead of him are all established and all very much still in the thick of that chase in the championship kind of picture. But to me, if he goes out there and runs through Fiziev, and this is a one-sided fight, kind of anywhere similar to the Moicano fight, then I think that changes it. And I think that's why he's so keyed up for this. I mean, I talked to him before it, and he looks at this as he feels a little bit disrespected that he's not mentioned in that championship kind of conversation. I fully understand why he's not, right? He's had one fight since 2020. There was a 16-month layoff before Moicano. There was a lot going on in this division. There were a lot of names that kind of rose up and were stealing some of that spotlight and some of that attention. This is his chance to get back in there and get back into that attention and show people that it's not just he thinks he can be a contender, but his performance is showing that he still can be.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you can go in there, you can get a win, and we all know, and we've all been listening to this week about what people think is a good win and what people think is a bad win. But there is no doubt about Rafael dos Anjos' performance against Moicano. It was like he went in there and big brothered him, Harry, for 5 rounds. The fight could have been stopped at any of the championship rounds, in my opinion. Fiziev gave Rafael dos Anjos credit this week for taking the fight again. He's been talking about and lipping about Conor McGregor. He has a landlord over in Thailand that's looking for money off him. He hasn't paid his rent in 3 months. He needs the win bonus, it would seem, in this fight. So it's all stacking up for Rafael Fiziev. But for him, Harry, the biggest problem that he is going to have is coming in a couple of days when the cage door closes and the fight begins and he has Rafael dos Anjos standing in front of him. How do you see the fight going?
Between his landlord, probably pretty one-sided, if I'm honest. I'd probably back Fiziev against most landlords in the fucking world. But look, I think the fight tells me a number of things. If you look at Rafael Fiziev, he starts measured, he starts slowly, he likes to watch his fighter, he likes to poke with long, rangy, really beautiful, really gorgeous kicks, really long, dexterous legs, and he manages to cover distance with those legs really, really, really well. What does he then do? Well, he ups the pace slightly in the second rounds. He ups the pace slightly in the third rounds. He's looking for big one-hit quitters. He's looking to not clinch. He's looking to not grapple. He's looking for anti-grappling, right? He'll only really use his hands as and when things cross the boundary of his ankles, right? We're talking pocket exchanges for shots. We don't see him covering distance with jabs all that much. We don't see him leaning in with ones and twos. We see him leaning in with kick counters and kick exchanges and these sorts of things. If you look at RDA, we know what we're getting with RDA. Low stance, tucked shoulders, smashed up face. And he's going to walk you down and he's going to get to your hips. And when he gets there, we got problems. His chain wrestling is fantastic. As we know, his Achilles heel in the past has been guys that have been able to counter wrestle or have been able to get up and then counter wrestle. Fiziev in the Brad Riddell fight, we saw in the third round that Riddell shot a beautiful double from quite a way out, dumps Fiziev for a second. Fiziev builds to a post, comes back up, gives Brad Riddell the back body lock. Now, Brad Riddell opted from the back body lock, maybe because he thought Fiziev was going to come out the back door, to just disengage from the position, push him away and carry on. RDA will never give up that back body lock. He will pick you up, he'll find a hip, and he'll dump you on your fucking forehead over and over and over again until you either choose to accept the position or your forehead becomes one with the mat, right? I find it interesting in the range, in the pace, and in the cardio battles here. This is Fiziev's first 5-round fight. It is definitely not RDA's first 5-round fight. We know and have seen that RDA can do what RDA does over 5 rounds. We know he can do it over 3 rounds. We have never seen Fiziev over 5. And one thing I think that causes me concern for Fiziev is that in the Brad Riddell fight, who doesn't set a crazy pace himself, he's certainly not a slow fighter, but doesn't set a crazy pace. He still decided to ease himself into the fight round 1 and then pick up the pace in round 2. There is not going to be that option in this fight. He is going to have to fight a Rafael dos Anjos at Rafael dos Anjos' pace. Why? Because if you're going to try and keep Rafael dos Anjos away with kicks, you best be throwing them anywhere above the elbow. because he's going to catch those kicks and he's going to run you down. If you're not going to close the distance with shots and expose your hips, how are you going to get in? That's the question I have for Fiziev, right? His footwork is great. His stance switching is great. His resets are great. But all that stuff doesn't work against RDA if your primary method of closing distance is kicks. That's a big problem. So that's my range problem. That's my pace problem. And the cardio problem is for somebody that is a striker with what seems to be the skill set of Fiziev, he gets hit quite a bit. And getting hit drains cardio. So if we do see some pocket exchanges and we are going to see him have to get up, where's the cardio at? We've never seen it. And the last thing I will say, as I know I've been droning on, let me just answer the axe kick question, right?
Yes.
So I can't believe I'm having to.
I absolutely love that you're doing this, by the way.
So to set it up for anybody that doesn't know, there was a clip. Fiziev does his usual, does his like matrix lean back right out of the way of a roundhouse kick, and I think the clip that hit Twitter was from the Mark Jacasey fight. And Conor McGregor said, well, if you just change the axe kick here if you change the roundhouse to an axe kick, you land flush. And away we go, Harry.
So the reason why that Twitter exchange needs more nuance, right? Conor is correct in that if you throw that from essentially right on top of range, Fiziev will get caught with it. What Fiziev is saying is, I'm not a dumb cunt, and I won't, if you throw that on my toes, I won't hit the matrix reaction, right? The matrix reaction is fine, because if you watch the range that Diakese is in, he's nowhere near the pocket, right? So Fiziev can do the flashy, oh, look at me, blah, blah, blah. I can do the matrix thing. My back actually bends, watch. Fine, right? If you're in a striking exchange, you only throw axe kicks either in the pocket or stepping into the pocket. You don't throw roundhouse kicks stepping into the pocket because it just doesn't work that way. Your axe kick is generally coming from your front leg, so you'll hop in on your back leg. Fiziev would make that read and wouldn't be doing matrix things. He'd just move backwards at an angle. Right? If you're throwing roundhouse kicks, you're either stepping into the roundhouse kick, which is not the same thing as not the same setup that you'd use for the axe kick, or the axe kick will come from the front leg. And you generally don't hop in and throw roundhouse kicks in that fashion. Plus, the overall knee setup is just different, right? You can hide it and you can hide it well, but the arch and the chamber of an axe kick is one of a half crescent. That's not the same thing unless you're throwing a question mark kick. So there's lots and lots of nuance to that fucking 256 character Twitter exchange. But the short answer is both of you settle down. We know where you are.
There's no room for nuance on Twitter, Harry.
Absolutely. And if Rafael dos Anjos finishes Fiziev with an axe kick, we probably won't see Harry here next week. He'll be
and, oh my god, it would be awesome.
Spencer, I just want to go to you real quick. Something for a lack of a better term, I feel what we've seen from Rafael dos Anjos since he's moved back down to the lightweight division has been somewhat a change of style, where, you know, we always knew he had that heavy wrestling and a heavy grappling game, but he did always like to kind of play around on the feet a little bit more than, you know, what we previous fights he would have had no hesitation in doing that. What we've seen lately is a more of a reliance on his grappling and a more reliance on his wrestling, and he's getting the job done fantastically well. Do you think that that's a testament to him and where he's at, his level of fight IQ? Because, you know, we talk about fight IQ and being able to read your opponent, but there's also a certain level of fight IQ where you have to look at yourself as well and the type of fighter you are, the wars you've been in, your ability to take a shot. Some fighters can get delusional in there. Look at Tony Ferguson. Look, that's the first person that speaks to mind. He thinks that he's better than he is, wants to stand and bang because he believes that he can do it still. But I think with Rafael dos Anjos, I think he's figured it out, you know, that he cannot fight the way he has fought in the past. And he has kind of switched it up. And myself and Sean would have talked about Jose Aldo doing something similar as well later in his career. And I love to see kind of switched it up. I love seeing that. I heard myself back there. I don't know what happened, but one of me is enough. We don't need two. But anyway, but like what I was saying was with Rafael dos Anjos, it's a testament to him and you know, his level of intelligence and his ability to switch it up. And it's paid dividends to him in these last couple of fights.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of him, just as you said, understanding sort of where he's at this point in his career, being 37, having been through some battles, having taken some damage over the years. I think it's a little bit of, you know, he tried doing the stand in the pocket thing and throw hands. It reminds me a lot of Damian Maia, when Damian Maia had that little spell where he started fancying himself a boxer, and then he was like, wait, I'm Damian Maia.
Yeah, then he got
I should
Nate
just grapple.
Marquardt. Then Nate Marquardt
Yeah.
kind of flatlined.
And the other piece of it is that RDA's moved back to Brazil. He's training with Novo União. And so I think a lot of this is Dede Pederneiras. This is just Andre looking at him and being like, look, man, you're 37. You're an absolute horse of a black belt with great wrestling, as Harry said. What are we doing here? Why do you want to be out there throwing hands with these younger, faster, stronger guys that can box you up but cannot defend your grappling? Like, between RDA and Pederneiras, they know his strength, and it's in the grappling arts. It's in getting inside. It's using that wrestling. It's using that submission game. And so it is a thing. You're 100% right, and we talk about it all the time on the show. Fighters, when they figure out who they are and can set aside some of that ego to fight against it and just be who they naturally are best at and do what they're naturally best at, feels to me like that's when we see them at their best. And I think that's what this is getting together with Andre Pederneiras after a bunch of years of, you know, you remember when he was in Huntington Beach and he was with Rafael Cordero and he was with Jason Perillo for a while. Those are guys that are strikers. They're striking coaches, right? Muay Thai with Cordero, straight up boxing with Perillo. He's now with a grappler who just looks at him and goes, hey man, grapple. And he listens to Pederneiras 100%. It's part of the reason he went back there, was just to have somebody in charge again. He had a couple years where he was running the show and he said, it went fine, but I need somebody else to just tell me what to do. And Dede tells me what to do and I'm going to do it. And so far it's been pretty good.
Yeah, it certainly has. And, you know, Fiziev himself is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the level of guys he's with as well, you know, training over at Tiger Muay Thai and also at SevereMMA, which is now called Killcliff FC. Killcliff FC. They're keeping us guessing down there in Florida, so they are switching up their names. But I mean, he's getting some solid work over in Thailand and the same down in South Florida as well. But I just think this fight is a little bit too soon for him. And I think he will he will find out a lot of things about himself. He'll be able to bring a lot of that back to the drawing board. And I think he will become a better fighter coming out of this fight, win or lose. You know, we can't deny the fact that he does have a shot at catching Rafael dos Anjos, but I think we're all along the same lines that Rafael dos Anjos is still better than Fiziev at this stage of his career and has the style to beat someone like Fiziev too. Harry, did you have something to say or to add before we finish up on this fight?
I just think that a lot of this comes down to fight IQ, right? And you know, there's lots of things behind the scenes that probably pertain to some of the performance of Sean Strickland, and he's caught a lot of flack this week because of his performance. But it's undeniable that there was a lapse in fight IQ in that performance, right? The question here,
I think there's a lapse in IQ in general with Sean Strickland.
I mean, very possibly, but I think that there is a large question here, more about, has RDA accepted who he is as a fighter, right? Now he's gone back with Dede. I think the question is, when he goes in against Fiziev, is he going to try and prove a point? Because if he is, Fiziev might just light him up, right? There is a very real possibility that if RDA goes in and tries to fight the young kid's game, the young kid is going to set him on fire. And there is a very real possibility of that. Brad Riddell is a really good kickboxer. And whilst it was competitive, he didn't see that wheel kick coming until it was slammed in the side of his jaw. So, you know, we're dealing with a guy who absolutely knows a way to separate a man from his consciousness with his limbs. And if RDA decides to take the flashier route, we could have far more of a fight on our hands than we're predicting. But we also, and I'll just add this as a point to sort of back up Fiziev, because I think we've sort of slated him a little, is we don't know when Father Time is going to come for RDA, right? There is every chance, he was out for 16 months, Spencer was saying. 16 months is a long old time. Is that because he just couldn't get healthy? Is that because he wanted some time away? Only RDA will truly know that, and will truly
Two surgeries.
Right, 2 surgeries, right?
That's at least one surgery, but 2 bad injuries.
Right, that's your body telling you, just so you know, motherfucker, we're not doing this for too long, right? And maybe we see, in a similar way to we saw with Max Holloway, maybe we just see the game catch up with RDA on Saturday night.
Indeed, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the questions that we have asked, that's what makes this fight so intriguing. That's why I can't wait to look at it. I always love, Rafael dos Anjos has fought the who's who, has given us some great moments inside the octagon. So, even though his fight style may not be the most exciting right now, I still enjoy the problems that he brings into the octagon. And Rafael Fiziev is going to have a lot of questions to answer, and I'm very curious to see how he handles them, because I have a feeling if Rafael Fiziev does go in there and does get the job done, that our conversation about him for his next fight is going to be a hell of a lot different, and that's going to be exciting to see. Sauber Alio and Armen Petrosyan, two Dana White Contender Series alumni in the co-main event. Spencer, we were on here wondering why Baralho was getting a co-main event slot. You rightly suggested it was because the UFC are trying to give him a little bit of jump, a little bit of gravitation towards the upper echelons of the middleweight division. And he got the win on his debut in the co-main event slot. They've kind of kept him on a level par here. They've not given him somebody that maybe has a couple of fights inside the UFC, another Dana White Contender Series alumni in Petrosyan here. Try make sense of this one for me, please.
I mean, it's essentially that reaction, right? I felt the same way after that win. And look, it was a technical decision. He dominated the fight up until the point that he throws an illegal knee. Fight gets stopped. We go to the cards, all of that stuff. I would have liked to have seen him get a step up here. Like, put him in there with one of the veteran guys that's got some fights, that's got some experience, that we know can stop the takedown, or at least make him work for the takedown. Because I don't think this fight is really going to tell us much. And Harry and I were talking earlier in the week. I wrote about it yesterday or today on Keyboard Kimura, that I'm just not sold on this guy. Like, I have so many questions, and I don't think this fight answers them, because Armen Petrosyan got taken down 3 times in a 4-minute fight on Contender Series. And if that's what the takedown defense is, Caio Borralho is going to put you on the ground, and he will keep you there or find a finish. And so this, to me, is another kind of take the good. It's a win-win for the UFC, right? Either way, a Contender Series guy goes 2-0 and moves forward and is in a little bit of a spotlight place. Now, mind you, this card isn't going to get anywhere near the attention of some of the others, because it's a Contender Series kind of co-main event, but it's win-win for the UFC. I think they would prefer Borralho to go forward, because he kind of looks the part and wants to be the part. But this is one for me that I don't think there's going to be a lot of answers. There may be a few more questions coming out of it, depending on how it looks, but I think it's probably just going to be a move forward and get him in there with a veteran already kind of fight for Borralho.
Yeah, that's the way I see it myself as well. I'm curious to see what you think about it as well, Harry. It's like, all right, he's going to go in there and likely get the job done. You would expect that Borralho will get the job done over Petrosyan, and it's more like, well, what did we get out of this? You just have an extra win in your record here, and I feel that we're just going to be left wanting more one way or another in this fight. What's your feelings on the co-main event, Harry?
It's probably a highlight reel for either guy, is the answer. Because Armen Petrosyan comes through an absolute war against Gregory Rodriguez, right? Just fucking swanging them fangs at each other until somebody was bleeding a little bit more than the other person. It was a very close fight. Don't ask me how I scored it because I don't remember. But, if you go in, you can go and show clips from that fight with Gregor Rodriguez and be like, look at this amazing striker. Look at how good he is. He's in wars. It's going to be amazing. And then if Kyle Bahayo goes out and, puts his glasses back on and does whatever, and he hits him with whatever it is and he finishes him from the back or he does whatever he does, like you have a highlight reel ready to go. I think this is one of the, you both have summed it up perfectly, right? This fight doesn't really tell us anything. I think if anything, the upside for Petrosian if he wins is if he can stop the takedown, right? Or if he can get up from the takedown after not being controlled too much. I think that on the feet, Petrosian probably has the edge, but it seems like there is a clear disadvantage in the grappling. And
we've seen time and time again where you have that disparity, that difference in the grappling. Even though you are better on the feet, you're always worried about the takedown, and it takes so much out of your game as well. And it'll be interesting to see for me if that happens in this fight.
Exactly. And as all of you have already alluded to, and I don't think I'm adding anything new here, I'm not sold on Kaya Bahayo. I'm not going to be sold after this fight. I'll be very interested to see who he is in 3 fights, right? We'll have a little bit more data. We'll have a little bit more information on him. But right now, as we've already touched on, even with a win here, if he goes out and doesn't take him down and finishes him on the feet, we learn some shit. But is that going to happen? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that's about as much as we can say about that co-main event. But there's plenty to say about the next fight on the card. Walks like a Nurmagomedov, talks like a Nurmagomedov, fights like a Nurmagomedov, but is no relation to Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's Saeed Nurmagomedov, who's taking on De Andrade in the third fight on the card. This is a really well matched fight between two solid up and comers. You've talked about the bantamweight division time and time again, Spencer. This division is just shit hot. Like, I mean, these two guys, they're not even ranked. This is just crazy. The skill level of the 135-pound division right now is insane. Awesome. And it's going to be fully on show in this fight right here.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of that, right? Like, neither of these guys are anywhere close to the rankings. If they win this, they're still not close to the rankings. And so I think it would be a 3-fight winning streak for either guy. Douglas Silva de Andrade, yes, he's 37, but he's, coming off 2 very good wins, 2 straight finishes, 2 straight bonuses, I believe. He's only lost to good competition throughout his career. He's a guy that's going to go out there, and this to me is the how focused is Saeed Nurmagomedov fight. Like, he looked terrific against Cody Stamann earlier this year. And the fact that he's fighting again for a second time this year is exciting to me. It's why I'm interested. I think he's one of those guys we've sort of expected more from, and he hasn't quite delivered yet. But Douglas Silva de Andrade is just a lunatic, and he will be out there throwing hammers and looking to smash you at every turn. I mean, he knocked Gaetano Pereira out in midair. Dude jumped up for a knee, and he just caught one and was sleeping before he hit the canvas. And so if you're Saeed Nurmagomedov and you're throwing a bunch of spinning stuff that we saw in the 47 seconds that he fought Cody Stamann, he threw 3 of them. It's a good chance you might catch a right hand on the way turning around. And so I'm so excited about this fight. Both these dudes bring it. They're going to be going from minute 0. And so we're just going to find out which one of them is ready to go forward and which one of them kind of stays where they are. I don't think anybody loses ground with a loss here because the division is so packed, but is the winner of this, or I guess the winner of this, sort of moves into that group just outside of the rankings that's quite full right now with talent, but should be a really entertaining fight.
I think we need to get another rankings for outside the top 15.
Yeah, we need the top 30 for shout out to Fight Matrix for having like the top 260 or whatever it is that they do, because
big time.
It's good to go through every once in a while and see where some other people are positioned.
Harry, it's rare you're going to see a bad fight now in the 135-pound division in the UFC because it's so talent rich. With, as Spencer said, with De Andrade, he's fought the who's who. Like, you have Rob Font, Marlon Vera, Peter Yan, Henan Barrow, Leon Murphy. You know what I mean? He's fought the who's who in the bantamweight division. He's still very, very dangerous. And coming in against Nurmagomedov, who hasn't been all that active over the past couple of years, and for that reason alone, it's been kind of hard to get a read on how good he is. If you don't know Douglas Silva de Andrade and you see Nurmagomedov getting a win over someone like de Andrade, that's a solid fucking win, even if you don't know the guy, because he's a tough cookie. But that's very much easier said than done in this fight, isn't it, Harry?
It is. And I think, again, we don't know who Saeed Nurmagomedov truly is, right? We really don't. Even at 15-2, even with the wins he has in the bantamweight division, right? I don't think we just yet truly know. This is the veteran test, though, right? And, you go and you look, and we're talking about lightweight. The veteran test is ranked 7. Ranked 7. In a division where there are a ton of brilliant fighters. Bantamweight, you're getting your test way outside the rankings, right? You're not even at the traffic lights to get on the motorway, right? You're just leaving your driveway and you're getting the veteran test. Douglas de Silva de Andrade is somebody, Silva de Andrade, not de Andrade de Silva. Jesus, these Brazilian fellas, I tell you. He is a gamer. He is in there from the first to the last. Go and watch, if you haven't, the Sergey Morozov fight. It is up there on my list for rounds of the year. Just absolute insanity, right? And if you look at Douglas, there is a cognizant focus to him that even through the chaos, he seems to find a way to, 1, survive, and 2, find counters, whether that be grappling or counters at striking. I find, and whether this is an over-exaggeration of his confidence in his wrestling, but it feels to me like Nurmagomedov, that definitely is a relation, I'm not hearing it, is a little bit too wild. Right? You watch Umar Nurmagomedov, and he has elements of the game of Saeed in that he offers spinning attacks, he offers elbows, he offers this, he offers that. But it's all done in a very calculated, very cerebral, very cognizant way. Saeed throws shots and lands off balance. And he found his way to a guillotine against Cody Stamann. He's found his way against good fighters to spinning attacks and kicks. His setups are nice, but I just find that against a wily veteran, if you're throwing big, looping, spinny, off-balance shots, you're likely going to get punished. So we could see some very interesting grappling exchanges here. We could really see if he's taken up the Nurmagomedov mantle, regardless of whether he's a relation or not. Because for me, you must have absolute supreme confidence in your grappling to be able to go out and throw naked spinning kicks at reckless abandon.
Who, in your opinion, Harry, if it does go to grappling, do you see being more dominant?
I have no idea.
It's impossible to say, really, isn't it?
Right. It could be, look, the Nurmagomedov style, right? No, I'm not saying the Nurmagomedov family style, but the style of wrestling that he comes from is one that is very fluid and very transitionary. Douglas comes from more of a solid jiu-jitsu lineage. So the transitions, I suspect, would favor Nurmagomedov because the wrestling exchanges are going to force dominant positions, whereas Douglas is going to look for back exposure and guillotines and hanging off necks and looking at Darcy's. And those are things that wrestling can counter really, really, really well. But as we saw in the Morozov fight, he might just snatch your neck. And that's a possibility. I just think we're going to see, the reason I like this fight so much and the reason I wanted to talk about this fight is that we're going to see, is the wild man tameable, one, and is it more calculated than we're giving credit for? Because if it's not, he might be fucked.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, he might. And I'm really looking forward to this fight as well. As I said, you're rarely going to see a bad fight in the bantamweight division in the UFC right now. Absolutely stacked to the gills, loaded to the gills with talent is
I
that
did just
division.
one thing, though.
Go
Sorry, I did
ahead.
one thing.
Go
And
ahead.
this is a question I'm going to ask you and Spencer. A man that late in his career, a man at his age, and the damage he took against Morozov, to be coming in 5 months later, how does that play out?
Well, if Nurmagomedov manages to catch him clean, it's not going to work out too well. We've seen that time and time again. But, yeah, he might be just at the fuck it stage of his career at 37 right now. As you said, his ability to put himself inside the pocket and get off his shots, you can't do that unless you're not afraid to get clipped yourself or not afraid to take one. But unfortunately, as I always say, you can't train the chin in this game, and it will go eventually. And, it's not beyond belief that it could happen in this fight. It very well could. I mean, I'm curious to see how Spencer thinks, what Spencer thinks of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's times that, damage is, I don't want to say superficial because that makes it sound like I'm dismissing it, but sometimes it's a cut and it just bleeds. And other times it's you got absolutely fucked and your brain's gone wonky for a little bit. And I'd be really interested to know, and there's no way for us to find out today on Thursday, a couple days before the fight, sort of how long he was out of the gym, how he was feeling afterwards, because that first round was wildness and the second round was as well. But was it he got caught with a punch or an elbow that cut him and he was bleeding and he needed some stitches? Or was it he needed 2.5, 3 months to just no contact and couldn't be in bright lights? Because those are very, very different scenarios. My guess would be, because he's back this quickly, that it was more of the former than the latter. But as Ian said, and as your reaction says, that could be me wanting to be hopeful that, he's not just at the, fuck it, I'm going to go back out here and make another paycheck kind of stage of things.
Yeah, it could be live by the sword, die by the sword for the Andrade, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Very good fight, as we said. Harry, I know you've been chomping at the bit. I know you looked at 8 or 9 hours of footage for this next fight between Jared Vanderaa and Chase Sherman. No win in 7 fights for either fighter here. It's definitely a loser leads town. It's to jeopardy from the wrong sense of term, in that but one of these guys is going to get a win here and the other is probably going to be packing their bags and leaving the UFC for good. Do you have anything else to add apart from that in this fight?
Fuck him.
Spencer, enlighten me, please.
I mean, you said it could be a loser leaves town. Chase Sherman already got sent out of town once this year.
Did, yeah.
Then got called back and got fed to Alexander Romanov. So,
I mean, Jay Sherman is kind of like, that gift that goes around of Abe Simpson from The Simpsons that walks in the door, sees Bart, walks straight back out. This could be a case for him.
100%.
Yeah.
Jared Vanderaa is out here this week talking about he wants to break somebody's femur with a kick. Save that for another fight, bro. This is just take Chase Sherman down and submit him. The last 2 dudes that fought him showed you the blueprint. My man wants to stand and throw hands, which he's not even that great at. He's perfect at it on the Florida regional circuit where he's fighting other dudes that just want to stand and throw hands with him. But in the UFC, he is prone to be taken down and submitted relatively quickly. You're apparently a black belt, Jared Vanderaa. Put the man on his ass, get your big body on top of him, and find a finish and let us get out of here. Because if not, this turns into the quintessential heavyweight main card slog fest that none of us want. Like, they're hoping for a quick finish, but if it don't come quick, then it just, oh my God.
Because one thing about Vanderaa, right, is that he actually looked pretty good in the grappling exchanges against Oleinik. And then Oleinik was like, haha, this is funny, watch this. And like, these things happen in MMA, right? There's death, taxes, and Oleinik submitting you from an incredibly dominant position, right? Like,
yeah, he just wants to let you mount him so that he can Ezekiel choke you from his back while being mounted. A wizard.
Just the dumbest thing in the fucking world, right? But these things happen in MMA. But to your point, like, there is a very, very, very clear route to victory here. Still fuck it.
There's a straight line to victory. Just take it, please. Please.
That,
We're begging you.
Yes, please do that. You know, whatever about me and Spencer who are watching at a somewhat reasonable hour over here in Canada, poor Harry has to sit through this fight at probably 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30 in the morning. That's tough. That's tough, as Harry says. Harry, one last question before Chase Sherman's next fight, BKFC, yes or no?
Immediately.
Straight in.
They'll walk him out of the cage after being rear naked choked in 15 seconds, and they'll just plop him in the middle, and
he's been there before. He'll be there again.
That's it. It was like who left their gloves in the cage last weekend. I can't remember who it was. You said it though. You don't need the gloves for BKFC, that's for sure. So you can leave him in there. You still don't need him to go to bare knuckle. I think it's quite likely that we'll see Chase or Sherman there, back there again. I'm not sure if he fought there before.
Yeah.
Do you think he has? Yeah, he has. Anyway, moving along to the flyweight division, the women's flyweight division. Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunes. An interesting fight here. One that I'm kind of curious to see. Calvillo was once proclaimed to be the next best thing at the strawweight division. It didn't work out for her too well down there. She moved up to the flyweight division, picked up a win against Jessica Ai, and it hasn't happened for her there either. She's going in there against Nina Nunes, who herself hasn't had the best run of form in the flyweight division either, coming off a loss of Tatiana Suarez and Mackenzie Dern. Both women here, Harry, are desperately in need of a win as well to kind of rejuvenate their careers.
100%. And I think Calvillo is two things. One, just not that great. You know, she started out having this brilliant wrestling pedigree, and some of the grappling that she showed was fantastic. But her size and range makes it very, very difficult for her to fight in the divisions that she's fighting in, right? She's always undersized. She's always outranged. And her style is to bundle her way into the pocket and then do the really nice grappling stuff. Well, if you don't have the hands to get yourself in, you're never going to get there, right? Because people will just teep the face off you and jab you and move. And, you know, by the time you're diving on desperate takedowns, their hips are far, far, far away. I think Nina Nunes, we're going to see something slightly similar, right? Nina Nunes is only losing to pretty good prospects in that division, right? Tatiana Suarez, these things happen, and Mackenzie Dern, these things happen too if you allow her to get to where she wants to go to, right? So I think for Nina Nunes, the blueprint is very, very easy to beat Calvillo. It's get on your bike, it's jab the face off her, and it's stuff the takedown. And then Calvillo is hittable. She's open for shots. And it just feels as though she hasn't evolved her game in the necessary ways. And I do feel sorry for Calvillo because clearly there is not a weight class.
Yeah, I was going to say it. She's the epitome of an in-between fighter where she's
Right.
just too big for 115 and not big enough to implement her game plan at 125. So it's just tough. That's a tough station to be in. Like,
I couldn't agree with you more. So I do have empathy for her for that, but this is fighting, right? And there are a plethora of ways for you to change your game to get to your strengths. And if you can't do that or won't do that, well, then the UFC isn't the place for you.
Sure isn't. Like, I mean, Cynthia Calvillo took a horrible beating against Andrea Lee in the last fight. The corner was forced to stop the fight, which was the right decision to make at the time. You have to wonder here, Spencer, how much that defeat has taken out of Calvillo.
Yeah, that's the question I have. That's the thing that I'm sort of looking at going into this one. And as you said, corner made the absolute right decision. She had nothing for Andrea Lee that night. I say this with no disrespect to Andrea Lee. If Andrea Lee goes out and puts a hurting on you to the point that your corner is like, nah, sweetheart, we're done, we're going home, what do you got left? Cynthia Calvillo is one of those people that is surprisingly older than you think because she started her UFC career and her MMA career in general a lot later than most people do. I think she's 34 now. It hasn't gone well in these last few fights. Granted, pretty good fighters overall, pretty good opponents overall. But I mean, as Harry said, this is the blueprint, right? Nina Nunes moves up. She's not fighting at strawweight anymore. She's coming up to 125, and she's she's got the opportunity to just sit out there and have basically the fight she had, excuse me, against Claudia Gadelha back in the day, and kind of replicate what Andrea Lee did with a little bit less power, with a little bit less athleticism, but more movement, more speed. And so unless Cynthia Calvillo is going to be grabbing and catching kicks and using that as her method to take you down, this feels like we could see sort of another fight where that corner is looking, going, what do we got here? Like, do you want to be out here? Like, what are we doing? Because I just don't, we haven't seen it in so long that it's hard to forecast seeing it.
Indeed, and shout out to Canadian Lives Matter for the donation. Appreciate that, my friend. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. And that was very well said, Spencer. It will be interesting to see. I'm kind of leaning towards Nina Nunes in this fight simply based off the fact of everything that we said about Cynthia Calvillo. The opening fight on the main card is a great fight in the lightweight division between Michael Johnson and Jamie Mullarkey. Mullarkey coming back off of that loss to Jalen Turner in his last fight, which, you know what? After what we seen last weekend, ain't so bad. That's okay. We're going to let you away with that one. Jalen Turner doing a one-man mission, trying to take out all the Oceanic fighters. So credit to him. Michael Johnson came in there, looked real good in his last fight, got a good knockout against Alan Patrick. And you know what? Michael Johnson's just in fun fucking fights all the time and still doing the damn thing. And it's just, you know what? He's either going to be on the receiving end of a good knockout or dishing out a good knockout himself. Credit to him at this stage of his career too. At 36, he's still doing the damn thing, picking up wins. How do you see this fight going down, Harry?
Kind of how you just said, to be honest. Johnson is a guy that either turns up or doesn't. If he turns up, he's quick, he's long in his shots, he has beautiful 1-2s, he moves well, he finds his range well, he moves into the pocket well, and he lands with big, impactful shots. Or he could just get whacked, right? Like, it's very, very difficult to know. I'd like to see Michael Johnson lean on the wrestling a little bit more here, even if just to bring the hands of Mullarkey down a touch. Mullarkey seems to be a guy that if he sets his pace and he sets his rhythm, he's a bit of a ploddy fighter. And I don't mean that in a nasty sense either. I mean, he's one of those guys that sets the rhythm and he's a bit like a train. Like, it's very hard to stop him when he goes forward, right? He has a touch of that Jack Della Maddalena about him, in that if he gets his way going, he's going, and it's very, very difficult to turn the tide. I like the matchmaking here, and I like it because, if Mullarkey wins, well, Johnson has a big name in the division, and all of a sudden you've beaten a guy with a big name. For Johnson, it's a step back, and it's a test to be like, where actually are you? Do you still want to do this thing? Are we pushing you too far? Are we, what are we doing here? Are you going to just be the gatekeeper to the upper echelon of, the middle tier of the upper echelon of the division? Or are you going to try and move your way back up? It's good matchmaking. How do I see the fight going? I'll tell you when Michael Johnson makes a walk.
Exactly. And that's going to be the interesting thing to see. Look, Spencer, you have to give Johnson credit. Came into that fight with Patrick on a 4-fight losing streak at 35, 36 years of age. It's hard to get yourself up to pick up a win at that stage after dropping 4. Your confidence is down, your belief is down. But you know what? Michael Johnson did it. He's been down there at I forget the name already, so I'm going to call it Sanford MMA. He's been getting some good work in. We've seen him working with Ian Gary. He's surrounded himself in good company, and it was great to see him go in there and get that win and show flashes of his old self in his last fight. And it'll be interesting to see if he can do that against Mullarkey in this fight ahead.
Yeah, I mean, not only was it great to see, but like, you could see what it meant to him, and you can tell then what it's going to mean confidence-wise when you're coming into this one, right? Like, I'm looking at the odds, I'm trying to figure out this fight, and he's the one of the biggest underdogs on this card. Sorry. That feels off to me, not just given what we saw, not just playing off last results, right? Well, he's coming off a win and Mullarkey's coming off a loss. It's not just that. Michael Johnson's been in there with the absolute best this division has to offer, and a bunch of pretty good featherweights as well when he went down for 4 fights. The results haven't been there. When you pull up their records beside each other, there's a lot more losses in Michael Johnson's column. but look at who he's been fighting. Like, how many guys can say that they beat Khabib? 0. How many guys beat Justin Gaethje? Not that many. Charles Oliveira's in there. Like, there's just such a litany of talent that you get that good win that sort of raises your spirits up. And he went into that one, and I think he was very, very like, didn't want a lot of interaction with his coaches, didn't want a lot of interaction kind of on the way out, just wanted to keep it real basic to get the victory. The unfortunate thing is exactly what Harry said. It's sort of a does he turn up or does he not? The worst part is that he could turn up for 1 round, 2 rounds, 2.5 rounds. Like, there's just been moments at times. He was beating Josh Emmett and then went out and kept his hands low and caught a left hook. He was beating Thiago Moises and then walked out in the second round and caught a heel hook. And so if he's the guy that fought Alan Patrick last time, I think this is absolutely a winnable fight for him to get a second straight win and sort of fall into that upper class version, maybe department store version of what Jim Miller is right now, where Jim Miller is kind of like the bargain store version of the veteran that hangs out in the lower part of the division. And I say that with all the love in the world for Jim Miller, but he's fighting newcomers, whereas Michael Johnson's fighting a guy that's trying to get somewhere and was moving a little somewhere before that. So I think this is going to be kind of telling. And as Harry said, and as we said, it's just going to be what Michael Johnson makes the walk on Saturday.
100%. 100%. We're going to swiftly go through the prelim section of the card. And I just want to jump straight away to David Onama, who is the one name that's sticking out to me on the prelim section of the card. Came in, made his debut against Mason Jones in the lightweight division, gave all kinds of fits to Mason Jones in that fight, where I was like sitting down, lying down, relaxing at the start of that fight with Mason Jones. But by the end of it, I was like, oh shit, we've got ourselves one here, because we all know how good Mason Jones is. And he moved down to his natural weight class in his last fight and absolutely murdered Gabriel Benitez. Absolutely blitzed him. Not without a few problems. He had a few issues at the start of that fight, but came back and absolutely put his lights out. And when you have that power and you have that ability, you're going to cause problems at 145 pounds. I look at it, as I said before, I have a tendency to get a little bit excited on here talking about the fights. Am I getting too excited about this one, Spencer? I think he's legit fucking contender at 145. He's a motherfucker.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting too excited. He was the guy that was going to be my fighter to watch this week, and then at the start of the week I was told that the fight wasn't happening, and I got really sad because I was really looking forward to the fight with Austin Lingo. So he's taking on Garrett Armfield now, and these two actually fought. It was both of their last amateur fights. They fought each other. Onama got a win. Armfield clearly got a loss. It was the only loss of his career. Now they run it back. Armfield trains with the Killcliff FC guys, the formerly known as Sanford MMA. He's had a good career so far. It's just that this is short notice. And I mean, everything you said about David Onama so far, same for me. Watched that Mason Jones fight and just circled his name and was like, get him to his division. Get him against guys that are the right size. Get him a training camp. Not only was it short notice, he had fought like 8 days earlier. And so he looked great against Mowgli. Think he goes out there and probably lamps this guy too, just because it's short notice and he's got big power and he's a little more established and comfortable. And definitely somebody that people should be paying attention to at 45 going forward.
Absolutely. Would you kind of echo those sentiments as well yourself, Harry?
I mean, I'm ever the pessimist, right? So let's see. Is my honest answer. I mean, I think the word prospects gets thrown around a lot, and I think 145 is a division that's kind of in a large turning point right now because of the events of last week. So if we do see Onama come in here and make a big statement, there is every chance that they push him quite dramatically. You know, he's 28. He's not the youngest, to have had 10 fights. So I don't think they're going to give him the Jai Herbert treatment necessarily, but I think that they may start to accelerate him up the ranks a little bit. But look, he looked great against Mason Jones. Really, really good. He looked great against Benitez. Now, I don't think we're going to see a vast test in this one. You know, what's your man's name? Garfield.
Garrett Armfield. Garfield is very good.
Garfield.
Very good. Very good.
The thing we see in Garrett Armfield is he's coming up from a lower weight class. That's never a great sign when you're going against David Onama. And look, I mean, it seems to me like, short notice, we pulled a guy in for you to get a highlight reel. Armfield will get another fight in the UFC as a thanks, and we all move on.
Indeed, yeah. And I think I was going to kind of highlight that fact as well. Just simply getting in there and getting a win would be a loss for Omama. He needs to go in there and absolutely blitz Armfield. I'm confident that he can do it. I think he's one definitely we should be watching, and I'm excited to see perform on the prelim section. I'm looking through. We're going to breeze through these. I'm looking at Eamon Zabi. I'm looking at Ricky Turcos, Shevchenko versus Courtney Casey, Kennedy Nchukwu versus Carl Robertson, Ronnie Lawrence, a great fighter who's fighting Karak Kamanov as the opening fight of the card. Spencer, I'm going to go to you maybe just to give me what the pick of those bunches for you.
I'm going to leave the Ronnie Lawrence one for my man Harry, because I know he's interested in that one. So I'm going to say Eamon Zahabi and Ricky Turcios. Obviously, Canadian, have a relationship with Eamon Zahabi. I've known him for a number of years, been out to TriStar, covered all of his fights. Coming off a really great win, coming off a phenomenal performance against Draco Rodriguez. He hasn't fought since then. There's been some stuff that he doesn't want to talk about that has kept him out of the cage. Pressed him on it. He didn't even want to tell me off the record. And Ricky Turcios is one of those guys. He kind of feels like the spiritual follower of Diego Sanchez. Like he's the inheritor of that mantle. He's a little bit out there. He's a little bit yoga, crystals, mindfulness, spiritualness, and kind of just likes getting in fist fights. He is a black belt. I think he got his black belt when he got his win over Brady Hestad to win the Ultimate Fighter. The track record for Ultimate Fighter winners lately hasn't been great.
Not at all.
You got to go back a bunch of years to Kamaru Usman and Carlos Esparza for the last like real impactful. Tatiana Suarez was on the way, but she's been hurt for the last 3 years. And so I just kind of want to see if like this feels like a good test for Ricky Turcios. It feels like a good measuring stick of like, can this guy be something? Do we have a little something in a tough winner here? And if not, it's a chance for Eamon to get a second win and move forward off a guy that, a little bit of buzz, a little bit of shine coming off of the Ultimate Fighter.
Indeed, we're still waiting for Jesse Taylor to kind of come through and shine the light for Tough, and it hasn't happened yet, and I don't think it's going to either.
It's been a bad run. I wrote it out so that I could actually like make sure that I was not just talking out of my ass. And the best of it has been like Macy Chasson, Tim Elliott, like
not
kind
good.
of that range of, not to take anything away from them. I think Macy's still putting some stuff together and Tim Elliott's a gamer, but like nobody that's really made waves in the last little while.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to say. Bronny Lawrence is fighting at the start of this card, Harry. Why should fans be tuning in to see him fight? He's put on a couple of good showings so far in the UFC, and looks another good one in the 135-pound division. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, damn right. I mean, I wrote about him for one of my spotlights. You can catch us on SevereMMA every Monday around 10:30 in the morning, UK time, obviously. And the fight was Vince Cachero, right? There is something about fighters who are able to transition to positions fluidly that gives me a tell that fighter is a good fighter, a well-rounded fighter. And that's what I get from Ronnie Lawrence. His chain wrestling is great. On the feet, he has a nice wide stance. He moves well. He picks his shots nicely. He's not too crazy. He's not too wild. He doesn't get hit too much. But when it hits the mat, he's dominant. And his mat returns are lovely if your man stands up. And it's just a type of exchange that I really like to see. It's a type of grappling that I like to see. And I think it's conducive to a solid MMA fighter if you have dominant grappling. Now, his opponent has the same. It's a worthy test. But I just think there is something interesting about Ronnie Lawrence. And we're going to find out if that interest is legitimate again on Saturday evening.
Indeed. Well worth tuning in to see Ronnie Lawrence at the start of the UFC card on Saturday night. Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev is the main event. That's another preview in the books for us. We will be back next week to talk all things Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Whew, my goodness, what a fight. Come on, give me all of that. Thank you to everybody for listening along. Hit that barcode in the top corner for the SevereMMA Patreon. We have abundance of content on there for everybody to enjoy. Podcasts for every day of the week featuring Harry Powell's Speaker's Corner, an excellent podcast. Chasing Pack, Contender, the Q&A with Shawnee. Oh, that reminds me saying Shawnee's name. This $5 belongs to us, Sean. We're going to take that. Send our checks in the mail. We haven't seen an ounce of that $2 that was donated by Pat Sheen last week. We want our money. I know you're listening. Give it to us. You know where we live. Send it over here. We'll be back again next week. Head on over to the Keyboard Kimura. Check out Spencer's stuff. Nobody covers the UFC better, and I really mean that. Not because he's on here. Nobody does a better job. I guarantee you. Go over and check it out for yourself. Keyboard Kimura. Check out all of his stuff on Twitter. Same with Harry Power, the Severe Spotlight. 10 o'clock UK time. Wake up in North America and read the Severe Spotlight every Monday, every Sunday, whatever he puts it out. It's mainly more Sundays than Mondays, but check my podcast out, The Owl Triangle. We had a great interview with Joe Duffy this week. I really enjoyed it. And we will catch you all next week. But don't forget, most importantly, to head on over to All Real Nutrition. EatAllReal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA. Get yourself 15% off delicious protein bars. Thanks to the lads. Thanks to everybody for listening. We are going to be not live recording this anymore. We're going to pre-tape it. We're going to be releasing it every Thursday at 8 p.m. Irish time. So that's going to be the change up in the coming weeks. A little bit more stable. We've been a little bit all over the place due to scheduling issues, but we'll be back each and every Thursday at 8 p.m. We'll premiere it on the SevereMMA YouTube channel. We'll still get some interactions from you. You can send in questions before it, and we will answer them as best as we can going forward. Thanks once more to everybody for listening. Ciao.